Welcome back to the second half of my curatorial tour of Master of Appropriation. I'm Zemi Barr, the exhibitions manager at Blue Sky, and I'm looking forward to discussing some of John Baldessari's more recent works, made since the year 2000 and currently on view in our back gallery. Before we transition into the back gallery, there are two pieces from the artist's 2001 Intersection series that are installed across from our Pacific Northwest drawers that I'd like to talk about. Unlike the rest of the work on view, the Intersection series contains found imagery without any additional printmaking techniques or text. And each print, a narrow horizontal image overlays a vertical one, with the elements from both images merging at the point where they intersect. The portfolio, which contains 12 digital prints in all, is also unlike others in the show because Baldessari printed it himself in his studio in Santa Monica. In Statue Bound Person, a vertical image of a nude female statue in a playful nymph-like pose is combined with a horizontal image of a human body tightly restrained by rope. There is a contrast here between the violent image of the body that is rendered immobile and the sculpture that suggests vitality and movement. Yet, like many of Baldessari's works, this visual play also contains the edge of social critique. His pairing of a statue that depicts an idealized female form with a body bound with rope leads me to think of the ways women have been depicted and restricted by this role of the often naked object of the male gaze throughout the history of Western art. Hand with cigarette, bottle, buns, astronaut with 4 other persons tackles work and home life, a dynamic that has come up before with love and work in the last tour. In this piece, Baldessari combines a horizontal section from a domestic interior scene with what looks like a workplace, perhaps NASA, that many of us may recognize because of the astronaut's suit. Maybe this is simply a visualization of how home and work, or the private and public spheres overlap. Or could it also be something more cynical, like the dream of becoming an astronaut overshadowed by the reality of one's life, made easier by a cigarette, booze, and bread? After Intersections, Baldessari continued working with narrow vertical and horizontal sections of found photographs, in some narrow views, either tall or wide, from 2004, which leads us into the back gallery space. The intimately sized portfolio of 10 prints contains 5 vertical photogravures with letterpress text underneath and 5 horizontal images and corresponding text created using the same processes. Because each print only contains one image, what the artist chooses to highlight through cropping becomes elevated in importance, while the text below creates another layer of meaning for us to consider in relation to the image. For instance, in Stuff, Baldessari has selected from an image a vertical section that we may have overlooked, if not for his cropping. You can see a person's elbow is still visible near the left edge, providing a hint that the focus, or what the eye would have been drawn to in the original image, may have been the person attached to this elbow. Similarly, in Abandoned, Baldessari's horizontal crop centers on a suitcase or briefcase left on a sidewalk, perhaps a detail that we would have missed if not for his visual prompting. However, if we look at Temptation, the added text is not pushing us to notice something we otherwise would have overlooked, but instead to find the relationship between this word and what is happening in the image. Is the money the woman holds a temptation because it belongs to someone else, or she plans to spend it irresponsibly? Or has Baldessari added this narrative layer over an image of a woman who is simply counting her cash? Moving to the next wall, we have 2 pieces from Baldessari's most recent series in this exhibition. Front Row is a portfolio of screen prints from 2015 that Baldessari made using photos from fall 2014 runway shows in Paris. Karl Lagerfeld is a particularly interesting work in this series. The original image is a promotional outtake from Chanel's supermarket set for their fall 2014 ready-to-wear show. Baldessari's screen print version simply highlights the bizarre juxtapositions the original photographer unintentionally captured. Karl Lagerfeld, the late fashion designer, is posing with a shopping cart on Chanel's supermarket set, dressed all in black with dark sunglasses. The only other elements the artist leaves in the composition are a shelf of nondescript items behind Lagerfeld and the silhouette of a woman in the distance. For this celebrity fashion designer, the supermarket is a novel and innovative setting for his ready-to-wear collection. Baldessari seems to be poking fun at Lagerfeld by drawing attention to the black silhouette of an anonymous woman in the background. emphasizing the designer's remove, in more ways than one, from those who might actually shop in a supermarket. Numbered Legs updates some of the visual and conceptual elements one expects to find in Baldessari's work, such as numbering. You can see that each foot is actually marked with a number here, and obscuring faces. But now the artist retains the outlines of these faces and fills them with a range of primary and pastel colors. Each person viewing the Miu Miu show from the front row is now anonymous, so we are free to focus on their legs, and perhaps more importantly, their fashionable shoes. As Baldessari explained in an interview with Harper's Bazaar, this is really a lineup of shoes. It's just a quantitative picture, 16 shoes. However, I would argue it's not just a quantitative picture. It also draws attention to the social dynamics happening off the runway, among celebrities and fashion enthusiasts. Any status associated with being seen in the front row has been erased along with the faces, with each person now reduced to just another person in the crowd, with great shoes. Continuing his focus on the relationship between parts and the larger whole, especially when considering the body, Baldessari created his Noses and Ears, etc. series. We have one print on view from this portfolio, Couple and Man with Gun, in which the artist isolates noses and ears while also combining somewhat conflicting subject matter. In the left panel, he has transformed an image of two people embracing into a color lithograph, with the nose of the person on the left nude against the green color covering the rest of the face, while the shape of the other person's nose is filled in with red. On the right side of the print, a pink, almost red face with a yellow nose floats on a black background, while a blue hand holds a gun that retains some of its photorealism. Combining love or lust on the left with the man and gun on the right isn't that unusual, as sex and violence are often conflated in various forms of media. Yet a tension between the two images remains nonetheless. The pairing makes me pause to think more deeply about why sex and violence so often overlap. Is this a reflection upon toxic masculinity? It is also worth noting that this piece is printed in two pieces, rather than just on one sheet, with the print on the left slightly overlapping the one on the right. Could this be a subtle indication that the connection between sex and violence is not necessarily a given, that it can be severed? Baldessari's 2014 series, The News, includes a similar push and pull between opposing concepts, but in this series, he returns to his focus on the relationship between text and images. Each screen print in The News combines an image sourced from a daily newspaper. The text below each image are the artist's own descriptions of another image found in the same newspaper. Not surprisingly, these disjointed pairings create a dissonance between image and text that forces us to reconsider what is being depicted. When viewing four young people looking at pieces of paper, it is soon clear that the caption does not reflect what is depicted above. There are two people in the image, not four, and their ages are not easily discernible or really relevant. As usual, Baldessari obscures visual information through the screen printing process, muddying our reading of the original image. With clues he does provide us, it seems that this is the scene of a crime, or perhaps the aftermath of a serious car crash, with two police officers investigating. The badge on the officer facing us is simply a blurry yellow circle, but its color and placement lead me to that reading. There are also white squares with numbers near one of the blue truck's tires, which may be crime scene markers, along with two red bars that divide up the image's composition, much like yellow police tape might have done to the original image. If we come back to Baldessari's caption, four young people looking at pieces of paper, it is not only unrelated, but also rather benign in comparison to the aftermath of destruction or violence that we see in the image. Baldessari seems to be pushing us to be more aware and critical of how information is being delivered, and especially how context affects the meaning of the text and images that we digest. Following this train of thought, in Three Men Leaving House, Flower Planters Near Door, we see three men, faces covered. They are embroiled in a conflict, with what looks like tear gas and projectiles flying above their heads. The text below the image is somewhat accurate, at least for the first line, but the phrase, flower planters near door, is almost jarring, with this description of serene domesticity in stark contrast to the violent scene above. Did these men leave their houses with flower planters near the door before being photographed here? Although the text describes another photograph, Baldessari's caption allows these two realities to coexist, humanizing the men in the photo and giving them backstories beyond this one moment in time. The final piece I'm going to talk about in this exhibition is Two Foreheads, One Green, from the artist's Raised Eyebrows, Furrowed Foreheads series. It includes a dramatic combination of two images, in which yet another section of the body has been isolated. For the top image, Baldessari has translated a black and white image of a heavily lined forehead into a lithograph, exaggerating the many wrinkles in purple on top of the ghoulishly green skin. In contrast, the bottom image of a younger woman includes her eyes and raised eyebrows, along with a single line highlighted in green on her forehead. The visual comparison of old and young seems obvious, with this illustration of the toll time takes on the body morphing into a surreal, exquisite corpse composition. As facial expressions, raised eyebrows and furrowed brows can also communicate worry, skepticism, or surprise. Although this particular piece may not illustrate this as forcefully as the other works in the series, it seems worth noting. The series Raised Eyebrows, Furrowed Foreheads was created in 2008 and 2009 during the last major recession, and Baldessari has been quoted as saying, "Aren't we all worried? These works may be viewed as depicting that condition." I find it helpful to see this piece within its historical context, because, as we are again worried about what the future will hold, it is a consolation to know that artists have always been and will continue creating work in response to the current moment. Although John Baldessari is no longer with us, in 10 years from now, we may look back on what other artists are making now and remember how we made it through together. Thank you for taking the time to virtually walk through Master of Appropriation with me. All of us at Blue Sky appreciate your continued support as we temporarily move our programming into the digital realm. Until we can safely meet again in person, please take care and be well.